And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and yes, it is a TTID day on a Wednesday. Normally you see us on a Monday, but we appreciate you guys tuning in a few days later as we go through all of our scheduling stuff. Pretty special show today, actually. We're changing things up a little bit today. Normally, you would just have me, Mike, and Mr. Nesker on your screens, but today we were trying to mix it up. You guys have really responded well to Who Are You, our TFC preview show. So we thought today that we sort of combine the two and make it one Megazoid kind of unit show today. So with me is, as always, is Michael Singh, Mike, host here at TTID. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
Good. I brought out the hat today. I know you mentioned that. I used to wear hats a lot, and I stopped, and I don't know why. I just felt like I don't know if it was because I was too lazy to do something with my hair or whatever it was, but I threw the hat on. And you mentioned we're doing this show on a Wednesday, so it kind of just clicked to me. Like, are we trying to change the vibes right now with Toronto FC? Do anything in our power to kind of will this team back into the good books once again.
Yeah, we're trying to work our magical powers to try to bring back wins back to your Toronto FC. It's been a wild week for yours truly. The Jays went to a home opener, had to work 2 days in a row, got the afternoon matinee off, but then ended up really having to work most of the day. But again, we appreciate you joining. As you can see on the screen, no Jeffrey P. Nesker at the moment, but hang on, don't worry. You will see JPN at some point. But on your screen right now is Nick Finelli. He is the host of the CLTTFC podcast. He is an expert on all things Charlotte. Of course, this weekend, Toronto FC take on Charlotte FC in Charlotte. A little odd considering we just played them just less than a month ago, and we're already playing them again. But it's MLS, and that's how unbalanced schedules go from time to time. Charlotte are sort of in the same kind of form we're in right now, a little bit up and down in terms of the wins and losses this season. But we're bringing on Nick to talk all things Charlotte. Nick, thank you for joining us here on Toronto Till I Die / Who Are You? How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, both of y'all. Sounds like a good show you got going on.
Oh, we appreciate that. We appreciate that, man. Like, obviously, it's an interesting one because I think Charlotte and Toronto are kind of in similar places at the moment, not just from a standings perspective, but also just from a form and teams trying to figure themselves early on in this season. The sort of form sheet for Charlotte right now kind of reads similar to TFC. Decent start, kind of a little of a bumpy little middle here. How are you kind of finding things in Charlotte right now?
Yeah, very similar to what you all did. And I remember when the schedule came out, I circled these matches just because two new coaches, two kind of prominent, well-known coaches. How are they going to play each other? How are they going to start their teams? I was actually glad that we were playing Toronto in the first part of the season, because I feel like you all will be super dangerous more at the end of the season when everything starts clicking and they start figuring things out. But yeah, both teams I really expected with the new coaches that they would basically show an elevated state and give the fan base something that they feel confident about. Like, you all probably go into games not feeling as you did last year, kind of the unknown, like what's going to happen. You kind of know that they're not going to, blow lots of things, but yeah, the consistency's got to happen. We're just looking for goals. We're getting chances, but it just looks like Charlotte just needs to get some goals. And I'm really interested in the second match, because with both coaches, how will they adjust? How will it be different than when you all beat us in Toronto just a few weeks ago on the Insigne masterful shot? What will happen then?
Yeah, honestly, when you talk about Charlotte and you talk about their inability to score goals right now, seems like Charlotte has a pretty stingy defense. That seems to be sort of your MO right now. But I hear a lot of Toronto FC through, if you were to just sub out Charlotte and just insert Toronto FC, we're having the same types of conversations, on our show on a weekly basis. So it's funny that you should say that. And actually, just building off that, I'm curious, Nick, what's your perspective of Toronto FC this season, and also just maybe as a club as a whole? Like, how do you view Toronto FC?
Well, I feel like this year and this season, I view Toronto as being a dangerous team or can be dangerous. We saw, that they have players with such quality that they can change a game in a second, and you might only need that minute where that player is, got a break or has an opening, and they're going to take it and they're going to make the most of it. Um, so I feel like with that kind of star power, you guys are always going to be in games and a threat. And then with your new system and your new coach, I feel like Toronto's is also not going to be so far behind that they're not going to be able to catch up. Like last year, it was just like, season was over probably pretty early for you all as far as it felt. As far as Toronto FC as a franchise, I mean, you got a lot of history. You've been there for a while. You've won championships. I went to the match last season when the win, the 2-2 tie, and enjoyed being up there at the stadium, the fans singing and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good, nice things that are going on there, and I think just everybody has like lapses in their franchise. Maybe it's not players, but just kind of the culture that's going on, and it sounds like that's what's building and that's what's kind of helping a resurgence for you all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and oh, sorry, go
I
ahead,
was gonna
Mike.
say, we hope so.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
just if I could just build off that and just
yeah.
ask you just bluntly, and don't be shy. I think we all have had some honest conversations about Toronto FC on this show. Do you view Toronto FC as a big club in Major League Soccer?
Not now. We used
Yeah.
to. I mean, I used to just thinking, but not now. No, I feel like they are middle kind of the road club that can beat you on any day. They have the capability and the quality to do that, but they haven't shown the consistency, and especially after, last season and the season before, it just felt like they're on the upswing, but it's not necessarily like, oh my gosh, we got to play Toronto. Like, how are we going to do this? I even felt like at the beginning of the season, and that's why playing you all early was important, I think, to Charlotte, was that we didn't know how you are going to play, and of course, we didn't know how we were going to play. But by playing you early, we might actually had a chance to win a road game. And it's tough to win on the road in MLS. As far as playing at home, I think with Charlotte having 12 now, um, 12 games in a row at home unbeaten. They haven't lost at home since May of last year, like mid-May to Nashville. So everybody feels super confident about this game. They don't think we're going to necessarily, you know, score 6 goals on you. I'm sure they would love to score 6 goals, but they feel like they can win at the Bank of America Stadium that we have because of that advantage and just the drive they get. So even if goals don't come, a 1-0 game at home, they probably would still feel confident about that rather than giving up a goal.
Yeah, well, the way that Toronto FC right now are scoring goals, a 1-0 might be all you need, frankly, and just in terms of how things have gone over the last couple of weeks. I wanted to sort of take the focus back to Charlotte a little bit in a sense of, you talked about new managers on both sides coming in, and you mentioned and highlighted the word culture, and very much there has been a lot, that word has been used quite a bit here at Toronto in the
Mhm.
offseason and obviously at the start of this season in terms of what John Herdman has been able to do. But I'm curious about Dean Smith specifically coming into Charlotte. I feel like maybe it wasn't a hiring that came out of left field, but like a hiring that I didn't seem to necessarily fit what initially Charlotte's plans were as a franchise in terms of coming out and sort of playing in sort of the more British style. But,
Mhm.
how has he acclimated to MLS in your opinion, and how is he sort of viewed in Charlotte at the moment?
Oh, he's beloved. I mean, the guy has come in and taken the town by storm just because his professionalism, his communication, his openness to telling you how it is and what's going on. I think that has been very welcome. And then also the play on the pitch has been stable. And like one of the first things that we were concerned about all last year was all the goals being scored in the defense. And that same group is here, same group of four in the back line there, and they're having a great season. So what is it that's doing it? And so some of the players have said, really just talking about the shape and the organization that Charlotte is being asked to do and defending as a team rather than defending as individuals. And I think even your coach, John Herman, said that Charlotte was tough to beat because of how well they were organized. And I think that's the first thing he put in place. And then now, as the offensive chances have come, and we have, I was looking back, we have the fourth highest expected goals in MLS. But we've only scored 6. So we have also like the biggest gap of actual goals versus expected goals. On the defensive side, by this time last season and seasons before, we've already let up 14, 15, maybe even 16, 17 goals. This year we're sitting at 6, and we're second in expected goals against, which, also just kind of bodes well. So I think as far as like Smith is concerned, I feel like with the culture, he brought this professionalism and togetherness and communication that the players can communicate with the coaches more regularly and talk about what they think could work and kind of opening that a little bit. It was not that case before. He's
Okay.
not just an X's and O's coach either. He's more of, looking at the big picture for everybody, bringing
Yeah,
in younger players.
yeah, it's an interesting one because again, I feel like there are similarities between Dean Smith and John Herdman, and not just because they're both from the UK, but like more in a sense that they are, very much more system guys, right? Like they're very much more looking at the overall sort of blueprint and identity of the club,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to impart their football on that. So it's sort of this piece first, and then the football gets sort of sorted out and played from there. If I could follow up on that really quickly, this is going to sort of relate into Mike's next question, but the DPs, we've had our issues with our DPs, as you've probably well aware. Charlotte just sort of did a bit of a house clean on your DPs, at least the initial ones
Mm-hmm.
that you signed from the first year. Can
Right.
you maybe point to a few things that sort of just didn't work with these? Because the signings the eye test initially were really really great,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of DPS that could make an impact in MLS. But what do you think just went wrong from that perspective?
I think the DPs we had, and that being in Swiderski and Capetti and Jozwiak in the beginning, we still have Capetti, but
Yeah.
the two Polish players, Swiderski and Capetti, very similar, not in styles, but basically both wanted to be the man and both very much played a similar position, wanted to be in the middle up front. And neither of them were wingers, and for some reason they couldn't they didn't benefit from playing off each other if we played like a two-person front. So that combined with injuries and just also just the rest of the team developing in the depth, it didn't seem to have we didn't seem to have that iconic like this person is the man, this person's taking over. I know some people probably felt that way about Swiderski because he did score. He scored from set pieces. He scored in moments where we needed him to score, but it wasn't the type of DP that makes everybody better. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what you want out of your DP. You want somebody that's going to raise everybody else's game up. And hopefully with someone like Liel Abada, who we just got from Celtic, who also plays on the Israel national team, young player, he is going to be at that wing. That's his natural position. He's going to add speed, versatility, shift of play that's going to cause some problems for teams and open more things up for the likes of Capetti, who's now starting to kind of feel after a couple weeks out of an injury, kind of feel like he can get in that spot. But also we have Patrick Agyemang, who's not a DP, playing in that position while Capetti was gone. So we have a lot more depth at Charlotte than we've had. So each position there's not as much of a drop off.
So in saying that, then we went through obviously a couple of players. Charlotte's brought in a couple of new names, a couple new faces, dangerous
Hmm.
players. Leal Labadi, someone you just mentioned there, uh, kind of a surprise signing in my opinion, just from
Hmm.
afar. What is he?
Yeah.
22 years old, had you know very strong run at Celtic before making the move over, for whatever various reasons, let's call it.
Right. Yeah.
How has he fit in, and would you say he is Charlotte's most dangerous attacker?
Well, we've seen a little bit of him. He's played in two matches. He played the end of the first match when he came over. He was only here less than 48 hours before he played maybe the last 20, 30 minutes of the first match against Cincinnati. And then last weekend, he started against New England and had some good spots, but it's, just like everybody, it takes time for them to gel and figure out what it is they need to be doing. But yeah, he can definitely, we've already seen sparks that he can be dangerous and, carry the ball in ways that other players on Charlotte with the speed and preciseness cannot.
Yeah, fair. So would you say he's probably Charlotte's most dangerous threat moving forward?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Um, you know, until we start seeing goals, I don't know who I would say
Yeah,
is like
fair.
this is the
Yeah,
person.
fair.
Patrick Ayuman, is getting in position. He's having openings. He's scored one goal. We've actually had six different goal scorers this year. So nobody has come to the front and saying, "This is my team. I'm scoring," which may be part of why we can be successful is that different people can plug in. Usually that's a sign of a good club is if everybody, but you also want your man or your person to be, leading and having them and being able to rely on that person. And we just haven't seen it emerge yet, but it's early.
Fair, fair. Before I get to actually my script question, there's a question from the audience that I want to flash up here and
Mhm.
get your thoughts on. I think this is an interesting one because we've been talking about DPS and dangerous players and who does that look like for Charlotte. Um, and here it is. It's just basically, from a Charlotte fan perspective, would you take Insigne or Bernardeschi on your club? Like, is that something you as a Charlotte fan would want to see, or are you good kind of building the way you're building right now?
Well, you kind of picked the wrong person to do this because I'm Italian, so it's kind of hard to not look at those guys and be like, yeah, that would be cool, that would be nice. I know there's a great Toronto Italian culture up there. My dad actually came over from Italy and lived in Toronto before he was allowed to go
Oh,
to the
cool.
States. But yeah, I don't know. To me, what what I like about this club is the culture of the players and their attitudes and their relationship with fans and other people. They're really just like outstanding people. And I'm not saying Insigne or Bernardeschi aren't. I just don't know enough about them and how they basically build up the other players internally and also on the field. So if you all could share that, I would be able to, if you sign it and say, yep, those guys are going to make your locker room better and you're going to have it, you know, that and their excellent play. Yeah, I would take them.
Yes.
I don't know if those goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
But I guess what's your perspective of Insigne and Bernardeschi? You said you're Italian. I'm assuming that, you've at least kept an eye on these two players. So Fries is
Yeah,
Charlotte, someone who covers Charlotte FC. What's your perspective
yeah.
of the duo?
So, I mean, I love the way they play. They both have very great qualities as far as being able to use those small little opportune moments, like we saw in a goal, or just to get a shot off that most people can't. And they seem to find each other. In other matches that I've seen them play, not against us, it seems like they just somehow, when they are playing together, um, that they're able to find each other and they know instinctively what each other is going to do. Maybe that grows for you all and other people kind of get into the mix, but I feel like they have some qualities that are desirable for any team to have. And I think, you know, I don't know if I'd want both of them on there because I don't know if that then takes, the way you want to play differently. I don't know if a lot is based on how those two play. Now the rest of the team kind of has to play that way. I don't know. What do y'all feel about that?
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, if you want my opinion, I think that, and I think look, this is nothing new. We've said this on the show last year many times. They can be world-class players, especially Lorenzo Insigne. We've seen it already this season in terms of the ways that he can impact the game, the way he can make a moment of magic out of nothing. You saw it in the first Charlotte game, a game that was basically heading for a 0-0 draw, essentially, until he came up with that moment. But them playing together on the same pitch, I find from an offensive perspective, can slow you down a little bit, in a sense that sometimes they only pass to each other. Sometimes, they're only looking for each other on the pitch, which makes sense to a certain perspective, right? Like, obviously, if you're two class players that have come through the same sort of footballing mentality, then, you'll be looking for each other. But there are times where I do feel it does sometimes come to the detriment of the team, especially around our strike core. Now, our strike core, again, people who have listened to the show quite a bit and know the TFC, know that the strike core is not exactly firing on all cylinders at the moment. However, I do feel like there are times where our strikers make certain runs and they are just ignored. And they are not actually bad runs. They're actually decent runs where they're trying to break lines and the ball doesn't get played for whatever reason. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a world-class footballer and understand it all, but there are times where you're seeing certain strikers make certain runs that you think the ball should be going in to give them an opportunity. It doesn't get played, gets held up, or they're looking for each other, and it slows things down. So there is that. But are you asking, would I take them or not take them?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I got to stick with my original word. Is like, sometimes I like a club. I like TFC who swing for the fences sometimes. And sometimes when you swing for the fences, you're going to miss. You're going to swing and you're going to miss, or you're going to foul it off. Sorry, I'm using baseball references. I've been in a baseball mindset the last week. But, that there is going to be a bit of that. And you'll have to accept some of the good with the bad with that, in a sense. Mike, I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. We'll get to that maybe a little bit later, that question specifically. But I will say my perspective of Insigne and Bernardeschi when they're on the pitch together, and I've always said this ever since they first came over. They see the game differently. They play at a higher pace than anyone else in Major League Soccer. And in order to get the best out of these players, they need to be surrounded by really good players, right? They're not the types of players that are going to do, beat 2, 3, 4 players and do it all by themselves, right? They're at their best when they have quality teammates around them that can, maybe hold possession at times, that can play in between lines, then see the game that they see the game. So to your point, when they do get a bit reliant on one another, which they absolutely do, it's probably because they know that they're the two best players who see the game kind of similarly together. They have excellent first touches, can play passes at a pace that only they can play passes to. So Toronto FC haven't done a good enough job surrounding them with quality players, in my opinion. And in saying that, I don't even know if it's possible in Major League Soccer to do that with these two players, just their profile players. Bernardeschi less so, actually, surprisingly, even though Insigne has probably had a better start to the year. But that's just my 2 cents. Last question for me though, Nick. It's more so about Charlotte's atmosphere. I remember I covered the bank that did first ever game there, and obviously breaking records at the time. Atmosphere was absolutely electric, right? Now Toronto FC, the first, I want to say, and Mike can speak better to this, the first 5-6 years, crowd was electric, and I think it grew and grew and grew. And it got to a point that, club wasn't winning, started to fade slightly, and then clubs started winning, crowd grew back again. But now we're back into this phase of like, for various reasons, pandemic, team performance, whatever it is, maybe the crowd isn't what it once used to be, the atmosphere.
Right.
Is the atmosphere in Charlotte now, year 3, the same as it was in year 1?
Oh, it's grown. It's
Yeah.
it's one of those things that people have taken the club kind of as a family, as a community, and it's grown to the other people who are actually at the match. So the supporter section was always strong and led some things, but a lot of times what they were doing was not what the rest of the fan base was doing. But now you'll see like the whole crowd doing things such as our posing in the beginning dance, the different chants that we're doing, the different things like they're actually the rest of the fan base without that supporter section is now kind of melding in together. So I think it's growing. And also, we basically have had 3 different startup seasons because we've had
Yeah.
3 different coaches, 3 different kind of opportunities. We did make the playoffs, so that gave some hope into the next season. We had a new coach, new things. We've had different VPs. So we haven't had a consistency of players or coaches that every year feels like it's been like a rebirth and a restart. So people have that kind of optimistic attitude. If fans were not, if they're more complacent, like they get, at some places just because of not winning, like you mentioned a bunch of those things, that's when I see clubs having trouble. Is like when they don't care either way whether they win or lose. So when people are upset that Charlotte is losing, like last year, they were blowing games, but people were fired up. They were so upset that we had leads and we dropped, 23 points from leads. And so they were very invested. And I feel like as long as that's happening, Charlotte's going to continue, even if they are, not at the top of the league. I think if they're around that playoff line and have hopes of being in there, the fan base is going to come out.
Yeah, I love that. Um, Charlotte's crowd, I'll loop team like FC Cincinnati. I'll loop obviously St. Louis City. I feel like I have to yell that every time I say that. Those atmospheres are setting the new standard in Major League Soccer. Really since I would even go back to like when Atlanta came in and how they've changed the game as well. Toronto's behind. And I know you went to a game, I think you mentioned last year, and it's nice that you said some positive things about, Toronto's crowd, but when I see other crowds, I think Toronto's behind, quite bluntly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say because I think this if we're thinking specifically about sort of there's a difference between the south end and the rest of the stadium, right? I think in terms of how that gets set up, we could set up a whole podcast just to talk about that alone. So I don't think we need to go deeply into
Fair.
that. But I do think it is slightly harmed by the fact that the way the supporters enter the south end or the Lakeshore Terrace or whatever you want to call it is set up is it was set up with sort of individual groups and individual sections and not together, right? And that's just a relic of 2006 MLS. That's how things were done at that time. Now things are very different where GA and every sort of groups sort of stand together in the same area is a thing now, and that is very much how stadiums get designed at this point. In 2005 that wasn't even a thought, right? So I think that's something to think about. But also, I mean, look, part of the reason the atmosphere is not great is the team hasn't really given fans a lot of reason to in the last couple of years, right? And it is a give and take. Like cans give, but you gotta,
Absolutely.
right? And I feel like there's been some taking from TFC, from the club specifically.
Some taking.
So some. I'm being trying to be as political as possible, or polite as possible, I should say. But I'll leave it at this, Nick. And this is sort of the last question of the hit here is just. I'm just curious of where the pause then came for Charlotte, because obviously the pause then's not new. It's been in
Right.
world football for a long time. But how did Charlotte fans kind of adopt the pause then as the thing? Because I saw the opener, right, this season, and it was
Yeah.
wild to watch.
Yeah.
Right? I never
Yeah.
thought I would see that at Charlotte, but here we are, and you guys are all doing the pause then with that many people. So how did that get picked up in the stadium?
So what happened was, of course, we have the Polish players that were signed, and we had a second one come in, kind of, I guess it was Jozwiak come in, and they're like, now we have two players that are Polish in the, as DPs. Let's do something to kind of help them kind of feel like at home type thing. And so somebody played, one of the supporters group leads played a video that was just showing, hey, this is what they did at, this Polish match or something like that. And they're like, we should do this. Well, there's a big supporters council with 5 different groups that are part of it. They met and said, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And they planned it with the club, because there's a chief fan officer for Charlotte FC, and so they work with the supporters group, and they planned it for having the music and the things, and just the supporters group was doing it probably the first 20, 30 times. That's what it felt like. You were just watching one section, and everybody was just like, hey, what are they doing? And then all of a sudden, the players started talking about how that gave them such a rise, and that they wanted to do it too, even though they were on the pitch. Like, they wanted to come up and join. Like, it just got them so hyped. And you just started to see it sprinkle a little bit in every game past the supporter section, to that by the time year 3 comes, people just know that's what you do. So that's kind of how it got started. And there were some things, people talked about, well, should we change the name? Should we call it something different? Just because now we don't even have those players anymore. But it's just a tradition, just like the failed mic for the national anthem. Well, we sing the national anthem after the first set of lines for United States anthem, and that was just because of a mess up. But now that's a tradition.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And it's good with those sort of traditions that get built and grown out of just an organic sort of
Right.
something happens, and now it gets latched on and it becomes a thing.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the cool thing to watch as teams come into the league and start to grow their own identities through their support. Nick, want to thank you so much for joining tonight. We really appreciate the time and the insight on Charlotte FC. We wish you luck, not that much luck, on Saturday. Where can the good people find you and find your podcast?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So they can go to CLTFC podcast on Instagram, on Twitter, or X, and on YouTube. My podcast is a little bit different than most. We focus on the people who work for and around the pitch. So one week I might be interviewing a player, just did Nathan Byrne last week, but then I might do an interview with someone who's in charge of making sure the venue is okay for those people who are on with special needs, and things like that. Or we might interview the PA announcer and talk about his career and how he got to be a part of it. So it's kind of helping shape to know that there's more than just the people on the pitch that we watch. So it's kind of a mix of both, because it's such a new team, 3 years old. I wanted people to understand that there's a lot more than just what you're seeing out there, and I think that helps everybody appreciate more about all the people who do the work.
Excellent.
I love that.
Yeah, no, that is excellent. Nick, again, thank you so much. We really appreciate your insight. Again, we'll when we play Charlotte FC, we'll reach out again and we'll get you back on the show.
Sure, sounds good. And also good interviews. If you're ever looking, I interviewed the pro referees to talk about VAR and talk about how they structure and do things. So we have some good stuff with people outside of Charlotte too, MLS directors, stuff like that. So thanks
Perfect.
all, and yeah, good luck. I hope, like you said, good luck, but not so much. But I just hope it's a good game. That's what I like to see, and you know that's all we can hope for. Just have
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely. All right,
Cool,
Nick.
Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care. All right, that was Nick Finelli from the CLT FC podcast. again, thanks a lot to so many of the listeners. You guys were chiming in with questions for Nick. You guys have really taken the sort of the who are you show and really made it into something. So we really appreciate that, and we're going to keep on doing that. Whether sometimes we'll do it as its own separate thing, or at times we will sort of meld it into the overall TTID show. But as promised. He didn't start the show, but he will be coming in. It's Jeffrey Beacher. What's going on? He was in the comments getting at all of y'all.
Yeah, trolling Cerrone, coming in with my hot takes. Let's go. What an awesome idea. I mean, I know we shouldn't do a third podcast. We shouldn't, as you know, I don't want to be that ambitious. I messed up all of our positions. There we go. But what a great idea to interview people around the Charlotte FC experience, especially for such a new club. What a terrific sort of thesis for a podcast to, because I did notice that there's a lot of Columbus sweat equity stuff going around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff, how does it feel to be a super sub? Like checking in midway through the game right now.
Patrick Mullins, baby. Love it.
Patrick Mullins.
Love it.
Money
Mullins. Just call me Toss Saint Ricketts.
Could Patrick Mullins score more goals than Toronto FC's current striker crop right now? Would he score goals in this system?
You know it, baby. Patrick Molino only scores goals. You know it, baby. I say bring back Erickson Gallardo, and then we're winning.
Okay.
We're winning MLS Cups.
I'll never forget Vanny likening Erickson Gallardo to Diego Rossi.
Oh, I need a haircut. I agree, Boomslang. I need a haircut desperately.
I forgot about that. Thanks for the reminder. I forgot he said that.
Yeah. The elite winger, the search for the elusive TAM winger. Yeah, you guys killed it. It felt a lot like listening to a TFC fan complaining when he was talking about what was going on in Charlottesville these days,
Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons between the two teams right now.
100%.
Kind of shocking.
And now that Nick's gone, that's so sad. That's so sad. Toronto FC are being compared to Charlotte FC. I'm sorry.
Hey, we need to come back, man. He's going to listen to the rest of this. You just slice catching strays.
It's not him. He did a great job.
Yeah,
yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, right.
But it's an interesting one, Mike. Actually, I know we're going to get into the 5 questions here. But yeah, I don't disagree with you. It is a weird place because you asked the question, is TFC considered to a big club to him? And he was immediately like, no. Like that. We see Toronto FC as Toronto FC people as it should be a big club. We have signed big players. That's what we do.
Highest
but
payroll.
In many ways,
second highest now.
Yeah, but we're not. And in that it comes down to the things that we've said on this podcast before, which is you got to earn it, right? You don't just become a big club because you sign a bunch of big name players. You get it by winning trophies and winning big games and being the club that people talk about in the league. And right now, Toronto FC isn't really talked about. Yes, a little bit at the beginning of the season with sort of the 10 points in 5 games. That kind of took people off guard, and that became a little bit of a story. But even then, most people are like, well, we're just waiting for the shoe to drop. These guys are going to drop it. Guaranteed, right? And
they're shinier Charlotte FC. Toronto FC are shinier Charlotte FC right now. I didn't get a Arfield question in.
I cannot believe you guys are more upset about Charlotte FC calling us crap than FC Cincinnati, just like straight off being the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. I mean, that's still insane.
Or should I be more upset about Vanni Sartini and best team in Canada, which I know a lot of people are upset for what he said. I don't actually think he's wrong. So,
statistically he is. I mean, in MLS, Montreal did better, but who cares? I want to talk about what happened to home plate Nana. I mean, why has she been moved all the way over?
No, we're not. I'm not. No.
That's why we're doing a shorter show this week, because we all have pain points.
All right, so 5 questions. Okay, so because we're doing a weird midweek show, and because because we just really don't want to talk about that game last week, I decided to just jot up 5 questions that I think are timely right now around Toronto FC. I'm going to dish them out to you guys. We're going to answer them. We'll see. I think these are questions that are still going to be relevant beyond this episode, but it'll be interesting to get your take at this point. So let's start with number one. Raul Petreta's been out for a couple weeks, right? He started the season well. I think we can all agree. So my question is, when Raul Petreta comes back into Toronto FC's lineup, is he a starter? Does he make the starting 11? Mike, let's start with you.
Yes. I think he complements that back three well as that third left-sided center back. Nixon, and this is no disrespect to Nixon Gomez. I actually think he's still a very good player. I know he had a rough game in Vancouver, sort of coming back after the wrist surgery. But like in the end of the day, like I actually think Raul Petreta is a starter, whether you play him as the wing back position or you play him in the back three. I
So
think
he
right now he's a starter.
makes Toronto FC's best 11.
I would say he would right now. Yes.
Yeah, Jeff, do you agree?
He's the highest paid outside back in MLS. We gotta start
Left
the guy.
back. Get it right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, isn't that an outside back, center half, whatever? They all have a million different names.
Not right back though.
Okay,
That's the other guy.
That becomes the other guy on our team on the other
that
side.
belongs to the other guy. Yeah, he's a starter. Of course he is. Of course.
So who do you drop?
Well, not Amy Mabika. He's my favorite. No, I mean, of course, you gotta platoon
Nixon?
some of the other new guys. Nixon, probably.
So I was putting some thought into this. I dropped Shane O'Neill.
Okay.
Raul Petreta plays left wing back. Nixon plays left center back. Richie Larea plays right center back. Right? Kevin Long, right center back, and then Bernardeschi, right wing back.
I see where you're going with this, and I think I know why you're going this way. But I'm intrigued as to why you would go this route.
Well, I that was the end of my thought. Like, why am I going this way?
Well, okay, but you're putting Richie Larea in a position that just like he hasn't
played
really
it
played.
before.
Like he's not a center back. Like I know it's a
played it
back
last
three, and it's
year.
not traditionally a center back. I get it. I get why, right? Shane O'Neill has been making those kind of runs in behind Bernardeschi, right? And ideally, you probably want to have Richie Larea making that run instead of Shane O'Neill. Kind of get it.
Also him on the ball too, right? When you open up wide and Shane O'Neill receives the ball as the furthest right player and he looks at his options, he's not the best always at picking out the pass. Like he's done well, don't get me wrong. He has the ability to break lines here and there, but Richie Larea is 10 times more comfortable on the ball than Shane O'Neill is. So if Toronto FC wanted to play...
I would have questions defending wise. I would have questions about that.
I don't know. He injects some pace. He's got that toughness. The only thing is aerial, obviously. But give me Richie Larea in a one-on-one versus anybody in this league any day of the week.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's difficult to disagree with that logic. It's just
he also.
I can disagree with it.
He was also last year when he did play center back. He was outstanding for Toronto FC.
In like spots, not as the everyday 11.
It was a good like 2-3 game stretch.
I would but you want to go the entire season that way. Like if he stays healthy, you'd say go the entire season that route. I'm not sure that's exactly.
At least then let me rephrase. At least at home. Because Toronto FC tend to play a more attacking game at home. They tend to be in possession more. At least at home, then. Give me Richie Larea in that lineup because then you can play him more, I would say,
why not play him at right wing back and play push Bernardeschi forward?
So
I get what you're saying. Like
you're dropping Berna as center back. No, I like this idea, but
I get what you're saying. You want him on the ball more often and open up and pass. I get that. But I also think you slightly negate some of the best things Richie Larea does, which is get on the touchline, get at players, run at them, create havoc.
But you could still find ways to do that, right? Baby Flores is capable of dropping in and covering if Richie pushes up. He's done it for Shane O'Neill, heck. Like we've seen Shane O'Neill get advanced in ways that, we've never seen Shane O'Neill get advanced this year. But yeah, I hear your point. I don't know. I feel like in order to get your because like listen, if you push Bernardeschi up, you're dropping Ozo most likely then because Oso's been occupying that right attacking midfielder
I
role.
don't think also currently right now fits into the. I know he's the captain. He's going to play. I understand that.
Yeah.
I actually find a hard time for him fitting in this team right now. But
Let's go down that route.
Mhm.
Let's go down that route. I love that
Yep.
you went there because I was thinking about it.
Mhm.
You know, Jonathan Lazario, decent, you know, always gonna give you a 7 out of 10 performance, I'd say. Um, does he make Toronto FC's best 11?
currently, right now, yes, because like who else you got? Like
Like best
But if
11, like
everyone
when
is
everyone's
healthy, you mean?
healthy. Yes.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
Yes, but I think, I don't know if you play him exactly where he is right now.
Yeah. You
Which
might
is
have to
where
drop like an Alonso and play him as
Yeah.
a 6
You may have to
beside
drop him.
David
You may have to
Flores.
drop him.
Yeah.
Like drop him back,
Yeah.
not drop him out of the way.
Yeah, playing deeper in midfield.
Yeah,
It's
because I just like again, I think you always have you can always find a spot for Jonathan Osorio in an 11, but I just don't
He's
think
versatile.
he has enough game breaking ability on that front three, if you want to call it 2 and 1 up top, however you want to set up the formation, to be that guy right now, if that
I
makes
agree
sense.
with you. I agree with
It
you.
makes perfect sense. And you saw it writ
So-
large over the last couple of games, 100%.
Yeah,
All right, we made this 6 questions. We're already 2 down.
fair enough.
Okay, question number 3 then. We talked about this.
Oh, this
We
is going to
touched on
get
this.
confusing fast. All right, go ahead.
Jeff,
Question
I'll start
number
with you.
3. Mm.
Should Toronto FC consider trading Sean Johnson?
Only because he's in a contract year. But we're not talking about that game. I'm not making any conclusions on that game. It was a howler all around.
Yep.
I don't think it's because of the turf, because that's such a weak sauce excuse. But yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this a while. He's a trade chip right now. He's a free transfer when the summertime rolls around. So, time is not our friend in this situation.
Free transfer if he's going overseas. He can't do a free transfer in MLS.
Yeah, I mean, fine, but you know what I'm saying. I'm saying his value is on the precipice, and
Sure.
right now, with every day, with every hour, his value gets less and less. So much is wrapped up in the Charlotte game because of the specifics of John Herdman's press conferences, the way that this team is kind of facing its adversity that we all knew it was going to face. Ask me again after this Charlotte game, because I think it will decide what the opinions of a lot of these people are. And if Sean's checked out, yeah, get maximum value, 100%. I don't think Gavrin's the answer, like everybody was saying. But he's a trade chip and his value's depreciating. So yes to me.
Mike, what do you say?
I gotta know what the plan is. Should we consider trading Sean Johnson? I think anybody in the league, you should at least consider, what is the value of that player? Can you get something back of use, especially if, according to, I forgot if it was Tom Bogert that was dropping this, or not on The Athletic, about the potential mid-season roster rule changes that are coming, in terms of how DPs get used, and how U22 initiative slots get used, and how much GAM you get depending on which permutation you set up. It looks like it has been approved by the Board of Governors. And I won't get too MLS nerdy on you all in terms of the sort of the mechanics of all of this, but essentially Toronto FC, if this goes through, is going to have the opportunity to make some decisions on how they're going to build the top end of their roster. So do you go get another DP and just do 3 U22 players? Do you do 2 deep senior DPs and go 3 or 4 U22 players and get $2 million in GAM back? The reason where I'm saying this and why I'm getting into this and not answering your question, but answering your question now, is that if those are the ways you're going, it can dictate a lot of what you do with Sean Johnson. If that gets passed and you're able to do it this year, and you can get either GAM or a usable player back, then you think about it, right? And I think you have enough confidence in Luka Gavrin to be competitive. I don't know if he's going to be your everyday number one guy per se, but I think if you get the right deal and the right amount of assets back, you consider it.
Now, what if I throw it back to you and say, this is all assuming, I think we all assume Sean Johnson's probably not going to resign here in Toronto. What if I threw it back to you and said, Sean Johnson's willing to re-up on a 2-year deal? Mike, do you keep him or do you still shop him?
I still shop and see what you get. You don't have to trade him, right? You can still consider it, shop it, see what the offers are. If the offers aren't good, you keep him and you resign him, right?
What if it's $500K in GAM for next season?
I don't think so. And I know it's probably going to be hard to stretch it to $1 million for a goalkeeper at his age.
But I mean, a team like Atlanta United, and I think that just off the top of my head,
right?
I'm sure
right.
would kill for a guy like Sean Johnson.
Exactly, right to pair, and you have competition with Brad Guzan and things like that, right? Like,
I wouldn't even say that's competition. Like, that's Sean Johnson winning that day of the week, in my opinion.
You're probably right, but I mean, is Atlanta
they
in
just
the market?
Paid for that new keeper. Their number 2 is brand new from team in Israel. That they just brought in.
Cohen. Yeah. I think it's Josh Cohen. I think his name is.
Good call.
Yeah, I mean, look, if there's a team willing to come out and need a number 1 goalkeeper and give me $1 million in GAM, yeah, I think I'd do it. Even if he is willing to resign.
That's because of Luka Gavrin.
Yeah, I think you have enough confidence in Luka Gavrin to go. Again,
that's kind of what I'm getting to.
Yeah, it's because you have Luka Gavrin that you feel a little bit more confident in being able to shop those ideas. And look, if you don't get the exact thing that you want,
you're
you
looking
keep
for
Sean and resign. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. I think that's well said.
So TFC, man, how many times have we absolutely shit canned a goalkeeper because our backup guy during injury had a run of 3 games and then realized that we made a horrible mistake?
Well, no,
the most famous one was Alex Bono.
Yeah. There's always one, but every other one was. Summer rule changes happen so fast. Tell me more. I can't believe these summer rule changes. Unbelievable.
We'll get to it when it becomes official. Okay. Let me do the next one.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts on this. Federico Bernardeschi. Jeff, what's his best position?
Wingback. It's wingback. It's wingback because I hate him in the 10 because he doesn't play central at all. He just drifts. It seems that anywhere you want to put him, be it a false 9, whatever you want to call it, he'll play the same position. So it's like fighting against fate at this point, right? You're not going to teach this old dog new tricks. So maximize the value. We saw good things in there. He is a defensive liability. We know that. Let's plan for that and just get him comfortable there. I don't think this experimenting with trying to plug him in is doing anything to help the team, doing anything to help his attitude, because you're sort of having him chase that goal that may not be coming. Get him comfortable in that position. That to me is the answer to question number 3-4.
What do you think, Mike?
There's kind of 2 answers to this. His best position probably is wing back. You're probably right at this point in his career, but his best position on this team when everyone's healthy is as a winger, because your best right wing back is Richie Laryea and you play him there.
Or do you play Richie Laryea as a right center
back? manager player Richie Laryea. You give him the announcing role.
Yeah.
I like a Benny. Hey, shout out Benny. I haven't seen Benny in a while.
Benny.
Is it time to play Berna at the 9? That's a great point, Benny. Go ahead, Jeff. Shut it down. Tell Benny
because your number 9 will be all the way at the corner flag when anything happens.
Drift to the
we've
wing.
Seen it. It's just not happening. It's just not happening. He does not have his muscle memory contradicts that. Like there is it, and it's not a knock, like some players don't have that adaptability.
Kind of sounds like a knock.
No, it's not a knock. It's not a knock. It's a knock to anticipate that it's going to change. Like the proof is in the pudding. So at this point, like just maximize the advantage and stop dreaming about an alternate situation that's never going to happen. Like
I don't know about that. He's been all over the place this season, right? He's played on the left. He's played on the right. He's obviously been given some freedom to move around, especially now that Lorenzo's out. My only question would he have enough discipline to do all the things that number 9 needs to do, right? Like you don't have the ball all the time. You're gonna.
What do our number 9s do?
Sorry.
What do our number 9s currently do that
Piss me off.
Can't do?
They don't hold the ball up well. Don't always run the channels. Can't really
get in each other's way. Getting in each other's way is my new favorite,
right? Like I get where you're going with that, Michael. But can he do the job? I think so. Does he have enough of the discipline to do the things that need to be done? I don't know. Yeah. I honestly don't know.
So I agree with you guys. His best position is wing back, in my opinion. I would love to see him as a striker for Benny's point in this team. Bernardeschi, when he played his best football, he played as the 10 for TFC, in my opinion, because he had the license to get forward, was really direct, was forced a little bit more to play through the middle. I would love to see what that opens up, Bernardeschi as the 9. It clearly, like, long balls go out the window for the most part. However, it's not like we are doing well to hold up play when, balls get sent forward. Is he willing to do some of the pressing work? I think he's aside from Richie Larea, maybe Ozo, hardest working player on the team.
I don't think
I don't know if work rate is kind of the question for me.
It isn't.
To Jeff's point, there are a couple of players who just tend to hug the line, right? Hug the line a bit too much, are comfortable out there. Bernardeschi's played central midfield at the highest level, or close to the highest level. He's done it before. I don't know what habits he's gotten to his game now. Would he be able to, stick centrally? I mean, like Benny says, what else is working right now for this TFC team? Not much.
Give DeAndre some time to cook, man. Come on. He looked good on Saturday, even though he didn't go in.
I love DeAndre, man. I liked it when they dropped him back a little bit deeper, even, because remember when he first came through, they played him as a central midfielder.
Yep. Right? I remember.
They tried playing as a right winger, wasn't quite working out. Played him as a central midfielder. He found his touch and his ability to progress the ball forward, and his first couple steps electric. And I saw a little bit of that. I saw flashes of that. So I liked how John Herman wasn't afraid to go to that. But let's kind of that kind of does tie into this next question here. And I'll just throw it out there. Does signing a better number 9 solve Toronto FC's goal scoring issues? Jeff, you're shaking your head.
Nope, I don't. I think I actually threw this out earlier in the week. I don't think it solves for X. And I got roundly challenged by TFC Live with some great points. More goals don't hurt. Even bringing a 9 that changes the dynamic, that demands the ball more than the also rans that aren't even running anymore, which is our entire strike core, does change the team. But to answer your question specifically, no, I think there are a lot more structural flaws in this team that just a plug and play number 9 isn't happening. And I actually went further in my dialogue. I said, this feels like New York Red Bulls, right? How many times over the last 5 years was every pundit's review of the Red Bulls, are they going to sign a 9 this year? Are they going to sign a 9 this year, right? And you kind of felt like the front office, by not signing a 9, was letting this situation in the fan base metastasize. Like, all we need is a 9 and everything's fixed. And I feel TFC's done the same thing. Nothing is that binary. Like, You can't. It's just not that binary. And even Turt saying depends on the 9. I disagree. I think just the basic thesis of X plus Y equals Z, I find fatally flawed when you're talking about a team sport. So yeah, it will help, but does it solve everything? Absolutely not.
Mike, what do you think?
I think it helps. I don't think it's going to solve everything, but I think it's going to help. Like, I think if you have a better number 9, a quality number 9, one of those chances against Vancouver goes in. Now, does that change the outcome of the game? Does that stop Vancouver from running you for 4 or 5 goals? Maybe not. But I think it helps in a sense that some of these gilt-edged chances that we've been able to create, right? We have been able to, even when, I've said we need another number 10. We need somebody who can come in and really create goals and create moments of magic for forwards. We still have been able to create opportunities and just haven't finished them. So I think if you do have a number 9 that is class, that can finish, that has that pedigree, a couple of these chances that go spurned, whether it was, DeAndre's chances. A lot of people in the comments have been talking about Cassius Mailula, and they really want us to talk about Cassius Mailula all of a sudden.
We're not talking about that game. We've decided amongst ourselves.
Right? Maybe that
other
chance
than
he
like
has,
little strays, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that chance he has near the end of the game, maybe that gets potted away, right? Like, I think it can't hurt, right? Like having a number 9.
Does it solve it?
Does it solve every problem? No, it doesn't solve all the problems. No.
Goal
And
scoring.
it might
Does
create
it solve
new
goal
ones.
scoring?
Not all of the problems, no.
Okay.
I see you're about to go, but let me introduce what Turt said. You're telling me if we drop Ronaldo at the 9, it doesn't help. I'm saying we're ignoring the fact that we're adding another strong personality to a very fragile team with a bunch of fragile personalities, which is something that's not included in this calculus, right? Like, what if we get a 9 that's demanding the ball, a totally different style of play, and we're just adding to our problems of a disconnect on the team, right? These are things that we're screaming for, this like unicorn 9 that's just a plug and play solution.
That was implied in the question. When I say better, it's like everything better. But yeah, I'm with you guys. And it's funny that you brought up the New York Red Bulls there, Jeff. You know what position they did sign this offseason, and they're a way better team. They signed a quality number 10, right? Emil Forsberg.
Yes,
Game
sir.
changer for them. And I have a take. Toronto FC have not been the same offensively and have not been good offensively since the departure of Alejandro Pozuelo.
Yes, sir. We need a Victor Vasquez. We need a young Victor Vasquez, the same way that we did between 2016 and 2017. Take us to the promise.
It was, I'd say it's 2020, and there was various reasons for doing it. But gosh, if they could have found a way to keep Pozuelo, and I've spoke about this publicly already a couple of times, but the reason why they didn't want to do that was because they felt that having too many players like Insigne and Pozuelo on the pitch would have been a liability to this team defensively. Part of that's true, but I also think Paz got a bit of a bad rep because for a 10, he was also pretty dang, and for as skilled he was, he's worked hard and wasn't afraid to get into a challenge. Like, he's not obviously the best defender in the world by any means, but he wasn't afraid to back down from anything. But I truly feel that this team hasn't been able to have an offensive flow consistently, at least since the departure of Alejandro Pozuelo.
Yeah, and that's
100%.
partly down to the way Bob Bradley wanted to set up, and he didn't fit into the way Bob Bradley wanted to play.
Yep.
Stole my comment.
Yeah.
And then the behind the scenes shenanigans, which I'm sure everyone has a little bit of a taste of, but there were interpersonal issues. That's as much as we'll say on that.
Okay, so DP talk. We have to go with this. I can't do this segment without including this question in there. If you're Toronto FC, if you're Jason Hernandez, Bill Manning, are you actively shopping Lorenzo Insigne and Federico Bernardeschi this summer? Mike, I'll start with you.
They already were. They already were doing that.
After the start of the season.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah, well, you still are. I still think you are. right? Like I get the start of the season and all that. I still think you're shopping them. I still think you're shopping for an opportunity to move off the money, right? To give yourself some cap relief and try to sort of build your team in a certain direction. You know, John Herdman said all the right things because John Herdman is going to say all the right things. Again, these are two players he has inherited. They're not necessarily his players. I don't know if they're the players that he would ideally build a team around. So yes, I think you are shopping them. Are they? Is anybody listening? I don't
That's a
know.
different
That's
question.
that's the thing.
That's a different question.
Yeah,
But
fair enough.
Toronto FC is going to be knocking. You think Toronto FC should be knocking on every door possible
Yeah,
to try and
100%.
move on from these guys
100%.
still. Both
100%.
guys, Insigne and Bernardeschi.
Yeah, you're probably not moving both, but you probably move. You may be able to move one.
No, yeah, no, but like I just want to make sure, like, just clarify that it's actively shopping. It's not whether or not they're going to be able
yes.
to.
To
It's
answer your
whether or
question,
not they
yes,
should be
TFC
trying.
should actively be shopping both players.
Yeah. Jeff, do you agree?
Can I be honest? I don't think they ever stopped actively shopping them. I think that's been going on in the background for all of the good vibes and the bad vibes and the mediocre vibes. I think, following Lorenzo's 2 game-winning goals, if somebody had come up and offered them 75% of what they're paying for them, they would have taken it. And this is not a knock. Knocking the DPs is so 2023. I'm not going to do it. I think the team has been shopping them consistently the entire time. And I think that it's been like watching Donald Trump's Truth Social stock plummeting, right? It's like there is somebody on 24-hour duty watching their on, like, ringing phones like it's a telethon about those guys. And that, I mean, I don't think it's a surprise there.
Well, transfers are funny, right? You can't just there's not just the team side of things, right? It's also the player side, right? The player also has to agree to the deal in order for them to be transferred outward, right? So that does limit TFC's options for a player. Let's just say, I don't know, like Bernardeschi, who at least last season only wanted to go back to Italy, right? So it's not as easy as maybe it seems. I don't know how much they're actively shopping them still, just because I feel like they've exhausted all of their options, and the only way they get back to the point where they actively shop them is if they can raise Bernardeschi and Insigne. That is, if they can raise their value. At least Bernardeschi. And I guess then it comes catch-22. If Bernardeschi raises his value so well, that means he's playing well on the pitch, and that likely means Toronto FC is doing well. So then if they're actually doing well and, Bernardeschi's doing well, then, do you want to trade them? Or is it like, because Bill Manning made his bed with these guys, he's like, I told you guys this would work out. These guys are going to lead us to 2026. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily think that just because Bernardeschi is doing well, TFC is going to necessarily do well.
I completely agree with you, Mike.
Yeah, I think he could do well individually in the team, not necessarily do well. I very much see that. I think we saw a bit of that at the beginning of last year. So from that perspective, no, I think you still actively shop them. Again, it's sort of like, it's similar to your Sean Johnson question. In terms of, look, you shop them, and if the right offer comes along, then you entertain it, and you make the move. If you don't, then you've got them. They're under contract, right? Like, I think the question should be, are Lorenzo Insigne and Federico Bernardeschi going to actively shop themselves out this summer window to other teams, right? Like, that is going to actually probably be the question, because they probably going to shop themselves around.
This is my game.
Fair.
Fair. Don't be doing that.
Fine. No.
Yeah. I think so much. Just to condense, just for shiggles, I think a lot rides on this Charlotte game, and I said this in my column.
Why?
Because Herdman publicly came out and said championship teams don't lose 2 in a row. He made that
Herdman says a lot.
Concrete. No. But now he has to live in that universe with a very fragile team. And had it had its desired effect, and they did not go back-to-back losses, then it's more whiteboard material. But the problem with speaking in absolutes like that is that then you have to deal with the consequences when they don't necessarily go your way. And if they go three, if they lose three in a row, it just, we're not dealing with, as much as we'd like to believe that the dog days are over, we're very, very close to being right back in that again. I feel it. I'm all vibes. This is all I'm going to own up to, because vibes. It's It's unbelievably important what goes down this weekend. I think
Can I ask?
so unbelievably ridiculously.
I get your point, like from a mentality standpoint, from a buy-in
Mhm.
standpoint. I get that. Are we overlooking the injuries to this team a bit?
I haven't, but
What's a reasonable expectation this weekend? Right? You're gonna be missing Richie Laryea, you're gonna be missing Raul Petretta, you're gonna be missing Lorenzo Insigne, obviously. 3 guys who are starters and, especially Laryea and Insigne, arguably your 2 best players on the pitch at any given moment. What's a
it's bad
realistic
timing.
expectation away to
It's bad
Charlotte?
timing, but sports doesn't work with realistic expectations. And like I said, there is a lot of like really nice little bits of bite-sized copy that John Herdman's throwing out that he now has to live and die by that sword. And when it works, it's amazing. When it doesn't, it's this. And I'm hoping that it doesn't contribute to the snowball effect of this whole thing falling apart, the wheels coming off again.
Do you think players pay attention that much into what John Herdman says to the media?
Absolutely.
You think so?
Absolutely. I think he does
So
have an
you think they
opportunity to
watch?
go into a team talk and say, guys, that was for the benefit of the unwashed masses and not you. And here's the secret John Herdman decoder ring to understand why I said that. But I do think that absolutely they do. 100%.
So do you think they watch every press conference?
No, I don't watch every press conference.
So then,
what do you think, Mikey?
I think they know what he said. Like, I think they'll know what he has said in a sort of a Cole's Notes way. Do they take a lot of it to heart, or do they, probably not, right? Like, it is professional football. Coaches have to go up in front of everybody every Friday and, answer questions and say what they got to say and rally the support and from that perspective. But do the players know what the coach said? Yes. I think they have an
Absolutely.
idea on what he said, because I don't think it's super dissimilar to what he has probably said in the dressing room, probably given in a very different light and a very different tone. But do I think they put a ton of stock into it? No.
I think it also depends on the player, right? Like CJ Sapong, I guarantee you did not watch Bob Bradley or whoever it was press conferences at that point when he
Terry
was there.
Dunfield? You think he wasn't watching Terry Dunfield press conference?
I mean, you're
I
sort of
guarantee.
answering your question now. What he didn't, because he didn't want to, right? But like, we were talking about a buy-in, so I would think that the kumbaya environment that fostered this hot start, that's allowing us the margin to have this conversation without going, the sky is falling, that was part and parcel of it. You can't claw it back. So I absolutely think that they were paying attention. You ignore what your boss says about you in a public forum at your own peril, right? Like, you don't think JMR doesn't get that little cookie, that little dopamine hit when Herdman says good things about him? You don't think Ame Mabika feels great about like a 7 out of 10 performance when the gaffer says, hey, he was so patient, what a great guy he was? Of course they do. This is like, half of this is for their benefit. You know what I mean? Like, he's not an idiot. Some of these offhand comments that he's making are specifically tailored for the player to hear and then go back and hug themselves, with that dopamine hit. So
yeah. So I think even there, it's like moments, like little instances specifically, that Herman intends to maybe get back. Managers do that, send a message to their team. I don't think it's like every word. And when I said off the top, like Herman talks a lot and says a lot of different things. I wonder at what point does that, and oftentimes I think he keeps the messaging internally different than the messaging externally, kind of
For
to
sure.
Mike's point. So I don't know. It's a good one because when Bob Bradley spoke, I think more players probably read into it. When John
because
Herman
his tone
speaks,
probably wasn't different from what he said in the locker room compared to what he said in the media.
yeah.
Yeah.
John Herman's different like that. He's different. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting one. And look, I think, Jeff, I think you do have a point though about Saturday. Do I think it's the most important game of the season? No. Do I think it's important in a sense that, not
Gotta
losing
bounce
two in a
back.
row and starting that sort of getting that trend is important? Yes. And to answer your question, Mike, what is an acceptable or expected result with your best players injured and going into Charlotte on Saturday? I think you still can expect at least a decent performance and a draw, right? I don't think that's
Yep.
unreasonable to think about. I think it's reasonable for fans to expect not to, give up 5 goals and not give away a breakaway goal off your own corner. I think those are reasonable things to expect from a team, even when
I
you do have
expect
injuries.
Prince Owusu to not get in the way of Cassius Mula's shot. It's the little things, guys. It's the little things, the little, that's soccer magic, right?
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. One thing I'll say, 2 teams that can't score, that under is looking pretty attractive.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, man.
It's looking pretty
no one
attractive.
will be shocked if this ends up 0-0. All right, guys, let's wrap it up here. Thank you, everybody, for
indeed.
tuning in to another Toronto Till I Die episode / Who Are Ya episode. Thanks for hanging in for that. And let us know in the comments if you enjoyed mashing the two together, because if that's a thing, then it's a thing, right? Follow us on Instagram. You know where to find us. Search Toronto Till I Die, at TTID show. Follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you're calling it now. Like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to this on the podcast version, give us a rating or a review. We really appreciate it. It helps people find the show. Great numbers again tonight. Really, the show is really picking up in terms of you guys listening in and all the comments we're getting on the live show. So we really, again, appreciate you all listening in. For Michael Singh, for Jeffrey P. Nesker, and for Nick Finelli, who joined us earlier in the show for the Who Are You segment, I'm Mike Newell. See you next week, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
And wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.